You can fall apart. You don't have to always be strong. You're not a robot. You have emotions. You need to go through these emotions. So fall apart, do what you need to do, but don't build a house and live there. Just pick yourself up and keep going.
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate Bryan. This podcast highlights the stories of everyday women who are changing the world through their lives in all different types of ways. Every week, I sit down with inspiring women and girls who are doing something incredible to make a difference in the world. If you have a story or you know of an incredible woman or girl that's changing the world, or a comment or a topic you'd like us to cover, anything, please let us know. You can reach out to us on social media, through our website. We're always around and we want to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl REVO. We're on YouTube at One Girl Revolution. That's the number one girl revolution. You can find our podcast, videos, social media links, and everything else on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com. Before we get into the episode today, one that I'm really excited about and that has been in the making for a long time. I've been following the amazing Katie Scott for a long time. I love Hope for Harlow, and I can't wait to talk about it and share her story with you. She's amazing and will just blow you away. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about small businesses for a second. I know that we've heard a little bit about it or a lot about it, depending on who you are, depending on where you are. But during COVID, so many small businesses have been struggling and are continuing to struggle. And through that, so many individuals, families, business owners, workers, everybody is struggling and suffering. So I feel like we all can do better. We can all do better to support our neighbors, to support people in our own communities, to look for opportunities to support restaurants, local small businesses. Anything we can do will make a difference. And we always think we have to do something really big, like start a Barstool fund, like Barstool Sports has done, or Guy Fieri has done incredible work to raise money for small businesses. But sometimes it's just in the little things that we do, just where we purchase things. And I know that Amazon has become so easy for us. Obviously, all of us have been home for so long that Amazon just makes it so ridiculously easy. But I want to challenge you, everybody who's listening, look for opportunities to support businesses outside of the box. Look for a small business in your community. Order takeout from time to time, or go into a restaurant if in your state you're able to actually go out and eat at restaurants. We all can make a difference through the little things that we do. And I've loved watching, like I said, Guy Fieri and Barstool Sports and the Barstool Fund raise money and support small businesses, local online businesses, nationally. But we can all make a difference. And little things matter oftentimes just as much as the big things. One small business that I love and I've supported during the past year and will continue to do so because their stuff is so cool is Hope for Harlow. And on today's podcast episode, I'm so excited to welcome Katie Scott, this badass mama and founder of Hope for Harlow. Harlow was born with Lissencephaly, and when she was born and was going through a lot of difficulties, Katie decided to start Hope for Harlow to cover medical bills. What she did through Hope for Harlow and what she continues to do is absolutely inspiring. I'm currently sitting here in my American Misfit tee and I love it. They have so many cool products and continue to launch new products all the time. So make sure you follow it. Katie talks about a cool subscription box that she's working on. So we'll keep you updated on that and we'll definitely promote it whenever it comes out. But Katie started Hope for Harlow to support her own family and to support Harlow and all of her medical bills. But now she's used Hope for Harlow to empower other women, other mothers, and then they've supported so many other people get wheelchairs and support people going through difficult times. So check out Hope for Harlow. Katie is amazing, and I'm so excited to have her on the podcast to share her story. She talks about Harlow and their family, and they are such bright lights in this world. So I love following them. Follow them on Instagram, social media. I'll post all the links in the show notes. But without further ado, here is the amazing Katie Scott. Katie, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Hi.
I'm so excited to have you on. Like so many of the stories and so many of the women that I've had on this podcast, I actually can't remember how I first heard about your story, but I've been following you and Harlow and Hope for Harlow for what feels like years at this point. But I'm so excited to have you on to share your story in your life. So thank you for your time. But before we get into your story, I want to ask you, because this podcast is all about empowering women and women sharing their stories. Who is a woman or girl that's inspired you in your life?
Well, for sure, Harlow, but my mom, my mom is everything, and I don't know how she's dealt with me as long as she has. But yeah, definitely my mom. I couldn't have done any of this without her. I could not have raised Harlow without her help, period.
Well, you're such a badass mama. And like I shared with you, I'm so excited to share more badass mama stories. But I want to share your story. So I'd love to rewind to your early life, especially when we're talking about your mom. Can you share a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and just a little bit about your life growing up?
Yeah. Let's just start from the very beginning. I was adopted. So I was adopted right from birth. And then it was like a foster adopt where I stayed with them for 3 years and then they were able to adopt me. So it wasn't like a set up adoption, like where they met my birth mom and whatnot. So yeah, that was that. And they adopted my sister as well. So there's two of us. We could not be more opposite. We are total opposites, but it's cool because we are able to discuss things from different point of views. Like she sees things completely different than I do. So then fast forward a little bit, I had a really, really hard time in school. I used to get bullied a lot, which was kind of like the start of the insecurities and the anxieties of life. Because I remember like in elementary school, it wasn't bad. I had friends and came home and hung out with kids outside and I didn't have a worry in the world. But then junior high came along and girls were assholes. Like they're really mean. And I can't even imagine being a teenager right now because I was there before cell phones and the internet and stuff. So I can only imagine what these poor girls go through, or guys. So that kind of made me, I don't know, when you're bullied, like you just kind of curl in a ball and you just don't want to talk to anybody. And so it was really hard those 2 years trying to navigate, and like you're going through all the changes with your body as it is, and then like you're bullied, and then like so it just was a series of very unfortunate events back to back to back. So then I got into high school and I met some of my best friends that I still know to this day and still talk to them, and they kind of like saved me from that like horrible bullying life because they were able to be like, oh, who cares? And then once I got on to that, it was just like, okay, I really don't care what anybody's saying about me and I don't know why I did. So then, that was a huge change for me because I was able to finally feel comfortable in my own skin. And then I started rebelling really, really bad. This is why I say my poor mom. Like I got my first tattoo when I was 15 in a garage. Don't do it ever. But yeah, I did. Just all the typical teenage stuff, like sneaking out and having a boyfriend and this and that. So that was kind of me before. I was extremely selfish, and not in the sense of necessarily bratty. I just always put myself first. And I was just like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to do what I want to do. And, at the time I was just like, who's going to tell me no kind of thing. And now I look back and being a mom and I'm like, God, I was so horrible to my poor mother. So I'm really glad that, I grew out of that stage because it was not cute.
I feel like everybody kind of has those stories too, where it's like you have these rebellious moments, but that's why moms are such superheroes. Like people say that and it's so cliche, but it's like also so true.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It wasn't until I became a mom that everything just shifted. And I don't think anybody can have that shift until you become a mom, because you don't see it from the different like side of things, you know?
You and Bobby end up getting married, and then you find out that you're pregnant. Can you talk about when you found out you were pregnant with Harlow?
Yes. So this kind of ties into it. We were trying to get pregnant for 3.5 years, and it was just not working. We did the whole doctor's appointments, the egg counts, the sperm counts. We did all that, and we could not figure out what the heck was wrong. Like, I was fine, he was fine, it just wasn't working. To just be completely transparent, because that's how I've always wanted to be, me and Bobby were like on the brink of like divorcing, because we were both still very selfish, because we didn't have kids. We had, rent and our car payments and like insurance and stuff like that, but we didn't have any reason to be responsible. And so he had big dreams for himself and all these things that he wanted to do, and I had mine. And so we were just not on the same page at all. And so we're constantly arguing. So then it just so happens that we were in the middle of like one of the biggest fights we've ever had in our entire relationship. And he left like the house, and I was like, whatever. So then it was Valentine's Day the next day. And it was my mom's first Valentine's Day without my dad, because he had passed away the year before. So I wanted to go surprise her and get her some flowers and just kind of say, hey. So go to the store, get the flowers. And I'm like, wait a second. Because I was like, okay, I should get some tampons, like a couple things here and there. And I was like, wait a second, like trying to think when I had my last period. And I was like, this is so weird. So I was like, oh, I must just be stressed. But I was like, I'm just going to grab a pregnancy test anyways, so that I can like clear my mind, not have to worry about it, whatever. So drop the flowers off at my mom's, go back home. I still haven't talked to Bobby, and it's been hours. And so I go home, take the test, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. I put it down, and me and Enzo, my dog, would just, go off. And 20 minutes go by. I completely forgot that he even taken the test. And I go back for whatever reason, into the bathroom, and I like glanced down. I was like, oh yeah, you. And I looked down, and it's positive. And I was like, oh my God, what? And I was so in shock. Like, I couldn't believe it, because for 3.5 years we tried. And of course, the one time that we're literally wanting to murder each other, I find out. So by this point I had to pee again. So I took another one, positive, without even like a second going by. And so I was like, oh my God, this is real. So long story short, I somehow convinced Bobby to come home. And normally I would never do that. Normally I'm like a stickler. Like, so if he wants to be a brat and leave, I'm like, bye. Like, you can contact me. I will not give in. So anyways, I got him home and I showed him, and I was like, we're pregnant. And like both of us instantly just, I think honestly in that moment, we both dropped all the issues that we were having. And I know like a lot of people are like, a baby doesn't save a marriage, which it doesn't. You shouldn't have a kid to try and hang on to him, but that wasn't our thing. We weren't doing that. That wasn't the purpose of getting pregnant. So I genuinely believe that Harlow did save our marriage, because we were just so all over the place that she just brought us right back to where we needed to be. That's how I found out that I was pregnant.
Oh my gosh. I love that story so much. And she did, like, babies sometimes can center people, and they make you realize, which I know is so much your story with Harlow, is like, it makes you recognize what's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And for her, that was before we even found out anything was wrong. So the fact that she was able to bring us back together before anything, like it was just a baby, that alone was like very important. And then, in the future, if we weren't, that's why I always say like religious people or not, there is a reason for everything. And if anyone ever doubts it, like just look at Harlow, because she just made my life what it was always supposed to be. And I had no idea that my life was ever going to be where it is now.
When was the first inkling that something might be wrong?
Okay, so it's kind of weird. So my mom if anyone's following me, you already know about this, but if new people are listening in, I have like a steel mom gut. Like my mom gut is just like the sixth sense for me. It is always right. So, I had a weird feeling. I just had a very weird feeling, and it was my first pregnancy, so I didn't know. Like I was like, "Oh, this might just be hormones or whatever." I just had a weird feeling, and it never let up. I kind of, like I said, I just wrote it off. So then, at our 20-week scan, where they do the whole anatomy and everything like that, where they check everything, that feeling was like really strong that day. And I just kind of, because all of our other scans were fine, like all the other ultrasounds, like blood work, everything was fine. So we get in there, we do the ultrasound. The chick tells me, okay, if you don't hear from us in 3 days, then you're in the clear and just continue on with your plans for pregnancy. And so I was like, okay, like a little uneasy. That's like, I don't know. That's like a hard thing, like 3 days to wait, But I just kept telling myself, nothing's wrong. Like, why would anything be wrong? So on the third day, I got a phone call. And I remember I was at work, and I remember what I was wearing. I remember like all of it. It was on a Thursday, and I got the call, and they said that there's severe issues with my baby, and that they're going to need to do a like more intense of a scan with a specialist in order to like really see what's going on. And so they couldn't tell me much more than that. And I said, well, where is it located? Like, are we talking like missing legs, or like, where are we at? And they said brain and heart. And I was like, those are two things that you can't, what do you do? So I called my mom, called Bobby. I was hysterical. I was just like the biggest mess ever. And I'm not a crier. Like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but like, I'm a pretty tough girl. So I was like, I got this. But every time like there would be a moment, I would just start bawling, crying again. So I blame it on the hormones. So yeah, our scan or whatever was a week later. They made me wait a week. So we finally get in there, and it was like early in the morning. Bobby took off work, and normally they would take us into like a room, a medical room or whatever, and do like the scans. Well, in this particular situation, this little tiny girl came out. I mean, she was an adult, but she was so tiny, I remember. And now I know that she was like the Grim Reaper, but at the time I was like, okay, like, are you the specialist? She's like, no, I am a doctor that deals with like genetics and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. So she takes us into her office, which is not like a bed or anything like that. It's like an office. And so we sit down, and I'm expecting her to kind of, I don't know, go over paperwork that like bills or something. I'm not sure. And so she then goes, okay, we figured out for the most part what's wrong with your baby. And I was like, okay. So she starts telling us, and I kind of like fog out. Like I kind of just stop listening to her, and it kind of just gets really quiet. And it sounds like a movie, I swear, but it gets quiet. And I was like holding my stomach, and she was like kicking me. And I kind of like came back, and she was like, so what do you want to do? And I was like, honestly, I didn't listen to a word you just said. And she was like, okay. I was like, can you like dumb it down for me? Cause like, I just lost you in the beginning. So she goes, the thing that we think that your daughter has is called hydrocephalus. And I was like, okay. And they said, it's either that, a tumor, or a cyst. And I was like, okay. And it was like all over the board. And I'm like, what? So they didn't go into much more detail than that. And she goes, okay, so I'll hand you guys this paperwork. And I'm thinking it's paperwork on hydrocephalus or tumors or whatever. And it's papers to terminate the pregnancy. And I was like, what is this? And she was like, so we can, proceed. And I was like, I never had any intention of aborting my child. And she was like, I don't think you understand. Like the life expectancy is not even through pregnancy. Like she may not even make it through this pregnancy. And I was like, well, then at that moment, I'll be able to deal with that, but I'm not doing this. And she was so confused. And I was just so annoyed with the fact that this is like their first thing that they want to do is abort a child because they're different. So I look over at Bobby and I'm like, I'm not crazy, right? Like, and he's like, no. He's like, we're not going to abort the child. Everyone has their own opinion or decision in this particular situation. But for us, we had been trying to get pregnant for so long. And then she comes along and I wasn't going to give up on her. And even though she's 20 weeks old, I've never met her. I don't even think we had her name yet. Like, I was like, no, I'm going to have your back. Like, we're going to do this, whatever it is. So the lady was just so confused, but she went and got the specialist, and we went into the room, and this is why I say, like, everything happens for a reason. So he comes in and he is like just like a ray of sunshine. He comes in, he's the nicest guy. I will forever be in debt to him because of how he got me through the pregnancy. I would come in and have a full-blown panic attack every single time I had to get tested or like scanned. And he would sit there with me and walk me through the breathing. He would hold my hand while they would do like the ultrasound. God, this man is like a saint. So, he did the scans, and the deal is if the fluid on her brain doesn't continue to get larger, then there's a large possibility that it will correct itself and she may just be fine. So I'm sitting there like, okay, sweet. And I asked about the heart and they were like, oh no, that was wrong. That was just a fluke. So I was like, couldn't have let me know that, could you have? So yeah, that we were just scanning every other week just to see if the fluid was growing. And unfortunately, the fluid was growing. So every time I would get in there, we would have like the numbers from like the previous scan, and we would just like be like, okay, don't go past this, don't go past this. And every single time, it was much bigger than it was prior. So that was the pregnancy. And in between those, week and a half that I wasn't seeing him, I was doing stress tests, where they like hook you up and basically make sure you're not like hurting your baby by your own stress. But I wasn't put on bed rest, but I was so depressed and so sad for the situation that I was going through that I just couldn't get out of bed for a lot of days. And I'm an idiot. And this is my advice to anybody who has a possible disabled child. Do not Google it. Don't Google it. Cause that is what sent me over the edge. Is I Googled it, and there is terrifying videos, terrifying pictures, worst case scenarios. Like, there's no silver lining at all. There was never like, oh, well, they may be able to survive. No, it was just all evil and horrible. So that's why I say don't ever Google anything. It's all going to be wrong. But yeah, so for the next 20 weeks, I was pretty down and out.
Yeah. Well, it had to have been so difficult too, because already like whenever it's your first pregnancy, you don't really know what to expect. Then you're so excited. It must have been like a whole range of emotions and just like almost, this tug of war of your emotions. Because on the one hand, you're so excited, and I'm sure people wanted to have baby showers for you, and they're so excited, and you're thinking about names, but then simultaneously you're getting all of these like negative reactions and people making you question, like, should we even be naming our baby? Like, is she even going to survive? Totally. Whatever. Like, should I let people buy me gifts? Should we buy a crib? All the different things. And I think that there are so many people, and I know that there are people that are listening to this podcast who have experienced similar things. We had a woman on the podcast whose baby had anencephaly, and her baby only survived for 4 hours, but she still talks about like what a gift his life was. And she was so glad that she carried him to term. But So fast forward to when Harlow was born. So you're going through all these different emotions back and forth. I'm sure that you were just somewhat terrified, like
Oh,
on the day that she was being born.
oh, totally. And so, like you said, like this is my first pregnancy, so I don't know how it goes. And we have Kaiser, so Kaiser's completely different than any other like insurance. How it works, like they won't induce you unless like it's like medically necessary. So my 40 weeks came and they went, and then 41 came and then went, and then 42 came, and I was like, dude, get this child out of me. Like 42, you guys are gonna make me go to 45. Like that was like the cutoff or something. I was like, you guys can't be serious. Like this is ridiculous. So the awesome doctor that I had, he called in and got me a bed for to be induced. And he said like my tailbone or something was just not happening and I needed to come in. So they hooked me up, and the way that they induce is multiple different things. And so they do this one where they put a balloon in your cervix and then they blow it up to try and like help. Yeah, it's pretty rough. So they did that, and they do it over like hours. And I was having contractions at this point, but they're really low. They weren't too crazy. So they did that. That didn't work. It got like half a centimeter open. Then they did this pill that basically like it's supposed to kind of throw you into labor too. That didn't work. So then they had to hook me up to the IV and do the progesterone or whatever that is. I'm totally probably saying it wrong, but whatever the P one is where they get you going, that's what they gave me. And they warned me, you know, like once we give you this, like it's going to come fast and it's going to come hard. So just like be ready. And at this point I was 42 hours into it and I was so over it. I just was like, I don't care what you have to do, just get her out of me. And they had mentioned C-section like earlier on because I was at 42 hours. So she asked me, and I said, you know what? I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to have another baby. So I want to experience this if I can. And so she was like, all right, let's do it. So the progesterone or whatever it is started working, and damn, like those contractions came so fast and so hard. I was like, holy crap. I don't know how the hell people do this with no medicine. Like, nope, absolutely not. Like, not going to happen. So they came in and they did the epidural, which normally everyone's terrified of. And I remember I was being scared the whole time. But then when you're in the moment, you're like, I don't care. Just get it in there because it hurts so bad, like the contractions, you know? And that was when we found out that I have like a reaction to epidurals.
Oh my gosh.
That was fun. I know other people have this though, because I've talked to a couple of my friends. They're like, oh my God, that happened to me too. So I'm not exactly sure what it is. I never really asked, but I like lay down and all of a sudden like a hot flash happens and I cannot breathe. Like it's so hard to breathe. And then you start having like a panic attack. And then you feel like all the blood, like you're low on blood sugar. And so you start shaking and like you can't, it's weird. It's weird. So that happened. And my mom actually came in and talked to me like off the ledge and was like, you got this. They gave me oxygen. They gave me medications to like calm me down. So after that dramatic like episode, things started moving along pretty quickly. And my water had to be broken. She did not want to come out.
She was comfortable in there. She was cozy in there.
I know it's out there. I'm not coming out there. So then it was about 56 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I was starving. I remember that. And finally they came in and they were, checking her. Well, it was when they broke my water that they left And then all of a sudden, because you can't feel when you have epidural, but something's going on there. Like things change. And something was changing. And I was like, dude, am I pooping? Like, what is going on? And I was like terrified because every girl, their first pregnancy, they're like, don't let me poop or
yeah. Don't let me do anything embarrassing.
Exactly. And now you look back and you're like, that's the least of anyone's concern. So the nurse comes in and she's like, okay, let me see. And she's like, okay, we can see her head. And I was like, what? Oh my God, it's finally happening. Like 3 days later, like, oh my God. So they came in and I am very, I'm like weird. I never was the girl that changed in front of her friends. Like I just was weird. And so all dignity goes out the window when you have a child, like when you have a baby, because not only do you have to strap your legs up like wide open, there's a light that like beams down directly at that. And then I had, because of Harlow being high risk, I had a NICU team in there. I had students in there. I had the emergency team in there. I had over 16 people in this freaking room. And I was like, okay, well, everyone's going to see everything. So whatever, like there's nothing I can do. It's not like you can close your legs. There's just no way. So I was like, all right, whatever, we're doing this. So I get her out in 2 pushes. Like she was cake. I hear all these stories about girls pushing for hours and hours. And I'm like, I did it with 2 and she's out. So I don't even know like how, So that was when everything changed and everything kind of became really real because when she came out, she wasn't crying. And she was a shade of blue that was not normal. Like it didn't look like she was about to like become pink, So then it was like bluish gray. It was weird. And so they grab her and they put her under the heat lamps and they're trying to clean her off, warm her up and all that stuff. They clip the umbilical cord. They're like rushing through everything and she's still not crying. And so I'm laying there and they're stitching me up and I'm looking at Bobby and Bobby's looking over there and his face is like pale white. And my mom and my sister were on this side and I look at him, I said, what's going on? And he's like not answering me. And I was like, what is going on? And he's not answering me. And so I yelled over like to the nurse, I said, what the hell is going on? Somebody needs to answer me right now. And so the nurse came over and she like grabs my arm, like right here. And she was like, okay, sweetie, we need to take her down to the NICU. Like she's not doing good. This is what we, planned for. We got this, like, we're going to take her. And I was like, just let me see her. Just let me see her before you go. Because if she dies, I didn't see her, I will never be able to get over that. So they wheeled her over to me, my mom and Bobby, and I look over at her and all I see are all these bubbles. She's just blowing all these bubbles. And it was nice that was the image that I saw. And they took her away. And so I told Bobby, I said, go with her. And he's like, what about you? And I was like, go with her. Do not leave her side. Go with her. So he leaves. So then fast forward, I kicked my mom and my sister out. I was like, I need a moment. The chick is still sewing me up. So it's me and her. And she's like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I need a minute, And she's like, okay, well, I just finished. So I'll let them like give you a minute. So I was like, okay. So the epidural was still going strong. Like I couldn't feel anything. And I remember just sitting there and just being like, I did it. Like I did it. And because for the whole pregnancy, I was like, how am I going to do this? Like, how am I going to do this? So I kind of like said a little prayer to God and I was like, please just like guide me right now. Cause I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no clue. I've never been here. This is uncharted territory for me. Like, I just need help. And so the nurse comes in and I was like, okay, like, let's go, like put me on a wheelchair and let's go. And she was like, no, your epidural has to wear off. And I said, no. And she was like, sweetie, it needs, and I said, no. And she kind of looked at me and I said, I will drag my half paralyzed ass out of this bed and I will crawl down the hallway all the way to the NICU. I promise you. And she was like thinking like, oh, you're just being a little dramatic. And so I start ripping off the tape and all my lead. And she was like, what are you doing? And I said, I told you, I'm going to see my daughter. I said, if she dies and I don't get to be there, I don't get to hold her, like, that's on you. And so she's like terrified of me. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be mean, but I just had a baby. So she's like, okay. You're obviously going to do this if I don't stop you. So she went and got this, Lord, I don't even know what this thing is. And I haven't seen it since. It was some weird contraption that they put, I'm assuming, older people on to help them pee. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, you have to pee before you go. And I was like, seriously, at a time like this right now, you need me to pee? And she's like, because we need to make sure that you don't have like a prolapse, blah, 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 like all this stuff that you possibly can have. So I was like, all right, let's do it. She's helping me on this thing. My dignity is literally out the window at this point because you're basically naked on this contraption with this girl you've never met before. And I'm like, oh my God, like if I could laugh at that moment, I would have. For sure. I would have been like, this is ridiculous. So she wheels me over. I don't know if I'm peeing because I can't feel it. And I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing when you pee. And she's like, oh, you're peeing. And I said, great, like, let's go. So she changes me from the whatever it was to a wheelchair. And so we go downstairs and we go to the NICU. And I get to the NICU and Bobby's standing outside of the NICU, which kind of led me to believe that something was wrong. Obviously, that we already knew something was wrong, but like, why are you outside, you know? And he was like pacing back and forth. And so I was like, what's going on? Like, why aren't you in there? And he was like, I need to talk to you before you go in there. And I'm like, okay. So the nurse was like, I'm going to go give you guys your moment. So he's like having a really hard time getting his words out. And Bobby's never serious. Like, if you guys follow me, like, he is never serious. He's the most blunt person you'll ever meet. And so I was like, okay, like, tell me what's going on. And he was like, well, she just had a really, really like long seizure. And this is before, I've never even met somebody who has seizures. Like, I don't know anything about them. All I know is the movies when they drop on the floor and they foam at the mouth. Like, that's all I know. So I'm instantly like, I kept getting hot flashes. And I was like, I don't know if that's, you know, hormones and pregnancy and stuff, but I felt like every time he would tell me something, I'd have like a hot flash. And it was, now in hindsight, I look back and that was my body trying to panic. And because now, in the future, whenever that happens, it's the beginning of a panic attack for me now. So that's what my body was doing. But anyway, so he's like, I just want to let you know, she's like hooked up to every tube you could possibly see, like, just so you know. So I was like, okay. So we go inside and I can see her, and the doctor like cuts us off before we even like make it halfway. And he's like, I need you guys in my office. We need to talk. And so I was like, okay. And this is where I say that if you are a doctor and you have bad bedside manner, do not be that person that gives information, because I promise you, you will ruin that person's memory of that day forever, like forever. So I got that lucky doctor, and he goes, if your daughter makes it through the night, then we can look into what's really going on. But we really kind of want to, before we run a whole bunch of tests, we want to see if she can make it through the night. We're just going to focus on her breathing, and we're going to sedate her. So that way, hopefully that the seizures will take a break. And I'm like, I don't even know what's wrong with her. Last I thought is we were having hydrocephalus. So I'm like, wait, what? And so I look up at Bobby, and Bobby's like, what are you talking about? And he was like, you don't know what your daughter has? And we were like, no, like, wait, what? Like, this is weird. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. Why are you talking to me like this? Like, you're giving us half-word answers. Like, just spit it out, dude.
Right.
And so he goes, your daughter has something called Lissencephaly. And I was like, what is that? And he hands me a packet of papers on Lissencephaly and says, here, you can read up on it. And I was like, holy hell. Like, are you like, what? And so Bobby was like, that's it. That's what you're going to give us. Like, that our daughter is probably going to die. And here's what she has.
Yeah. And we're not going to do anything. We're just going to like sit and watch. And then here's some pieces of paper for you to read while you're like sitting outside the NICU.
Yeah. So my epidural hadn't even worn off yet. Still couldn't walk on my own.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm like sitting there, just what the hell? So I kept getting that like heat wave again.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of pushing its way to the anxiety point. And I like hit Bobby and I'm like, we gotta go. And he was like, go where? And I said, I need to get out of this hospital. And you're not supposed to do that. Like, they need to discharge
especially right after you had a baby.
Yeah, you can't just be like, all right, bye. Like, so he looks at the doctor and the doctor's like, where are you guys going? And he basically said a 4-letter word that was not very nice. And we left. We went downstairs and I didn't like think, oh my gosh, my daughter, like I wasn't forgetting her. It's the fact that I like the walls were like closing in on me and I just started like panicking. I couldn't like think, I couldn't do anything. So he literally took me all the way out to the front of the hospital, like outside. And that's where me and him both like broke down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to do that. I think we all need to take those moments where sometimes you just need a breath and when everything is closing in. And I feel like so many things from your story, so many things were just being thrown at you all at once. And it was like, just even over the couple of months too, like since your 20-week appointment, so many things, words are being thrown around. Nobody's explaining things, which I think unfortunately is a lot of people's experiences, especially pregnant women. I think we've all had so many friends that have gone through so many different types of things. And, women don't know what's going on unless you've been through it before. And so if you don't have somebody who's explaining it and just throwing stuff, but I think it's good that you guys stepped out. So Lissencephaly, for those people who are listening, because now you're pretty much probably an expert on it with your experience. Oh my
gosh. I know. I get every time I go into the hospital with Harlow, they're like, why aren't you a nurse yet? And I was like, because I can barely take care of my daughter. I can't take care of other people. No. So Lissencephaly is for dumbing it down, because let's face it, we don't need the scientific version. There are no crevices, so you know how the brain is bumpy, right? Mm-hmm. Like when you look at a brain, it's got all those divots and stuff. Harlow's is completely smooth, so there's none of those. And in the divots and in the bumps and all that stuff, that's where connections are made. So that's where a lot of things, walking, talking, all those things, those connections are made right there. So when she doesn't have it, the connections are unable to be made. So there's like some hills and some valleys in her brain, I like to say, but there's no actual way to connect those particular ones. And then inside the brain, that's a whole nother thing. But initially, that's what it is.
So she gets diagnosed with this. She spends some time in the ICU. What has your experience been? What has her experience been? I know you're only speaking as her mama, but I know that she's had all kinds of health issues and you're going to all kinds of therapy and different things. But can you talk about little Harlow's journey and your journey as her mom?
Yeah, totally. So Harlow, she got out of the NICU 2 weeks later, and we got her to drink a bottle, which was like complete surprise. Because they say like, there's no way in hell that, they can do that. They wanted to put a G tube in her right out the gate. So we were supposed to be set up with a neurologist before we left. So he was out of town on vacation. So they had sent Harlow scans over to another hospital to confirm the lissencephaly. And then also on that point, so she had lissencephaly, hydrocephalus, the thing that she originally had, microcephaly, which is a smaller head, epilepsy for the seizures, and there's one more that comes later. So the neurologist came in and he was like on the computer, and we were sitting there waiting for him to come in. He didn't say a single word to us. And we were supposed to have like a meeting, like Bobby's mom took off work. My mom was there. Like we were going to do a meeting about this. And so we're sitting there and Bobby's like, are you the neurologist? And he's like, yeah. And Bobby was like, okay, well, are we going to like step out and like discuss things? And he's like, I have a meeting in 20 minutes. What do you want to know? And I was like, oh my God, Bobby's gonna kill him. Like, oh my God. And Bobby's like, excuse me. And he was like, what do you want to know? And Bobby was like, I want to know what the hell your problem is. And he goes, well, you said you had questions. Are you going to ask your questions? And Bobby's like, I have no interest in talking to you at this point. Like, I will find another neurologist. Like, you can go. And so the guy was like, you can't fire me. I'm the head of neurology here. And Bobby was like, you want to bet? And starts going off. They start like going at it. And so finally Bobby breaks. And I think the next step was like him punching him. So
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so
I was just having flashbacks of like when you told about how you guys met and
exactly. So Bobby was like, you know what? You need to get the hell out of here before I hit you, this and that. He's like, let's step outside, like the whole, like all of it. And so Bobby's finally like tapped out. Either he's hitting someone or he's leaving. So
right.
we tell him you need to go. And at this point I had gone outside because it was giving me anxiety, just like the fact that he wasn't giving us answers and just all of it. So I came outside. Bobby slams the door open and starts walking. Doesn't say a single word. And I was like, are you leaving? He said, yes. And I said, okay, bye. And he took off. At the time he had his motorcycle. So I was like, this is great. Like, drive off pissed off on your motorcycle. Like, okay. So that was how we met our first doctor. So over the next couple of years, I kind of grew some like tough skin and and I'm not mean to doctors. Like I get some people messaging me sometimes like, you don't give the doctors a chance, this and that. And I'm like, yes, I do. Like I go into every appointment expecting them to be able to help me, to help Harlow. And if halfway through the appointment, they're starting to say rude things or starting to say things that don't apply to Harlow or, then that's when I either excuse myself or tell them, you know what, I don't think it's going to work out. There's sometimes that I get like really bad doctors because there's a lot of them. And those ones, like, it gets my like blood boiling. And so I like have to like keep it together because otherwise I will like lose it. And then they'll kick me off insurance and then Harlow won't have anywhere to go. So I just kind of have to tone it down. And that's why I love Instagram too, because I can vent to people and they'll be like, oh my gosh, like we had that doctor, he's an asshole. Like, so it's interesting. It's kind of like a little community of other special need moms.
No, and that's it, is like social media has become such a great community space where moms who are going through difficult things or different things, that they can share information and communicate with one another. And I'm sure that you get so many people that reach out to you about all kinds of things that you're experiencing, but their own experiences, and even like ask for advice and talk about their own children and things that they've experienced.
Oh, totally.
So what has, if you could talk just a little bit about just all the health situations that Harlow has experienced? Because I know that there's a lot of things you shared with what the different things that she deals with, but what does that mean just like on a day-to-day basis? I know she still has seizures and other kind of health things that are going on.
Yeah. So, things have progressed over the years. In the very beginning, since she was still a little baby, it really didn't hit us too much. Like, we knew she was disabled and we knew something wasn't right, but she was a baby. So she wasn't doing anything wrong. She was, sleeping and just being a cute little baby. So at first it kind of wasn't like too in your face, I guess you could say. And thank God for that, because I had extremely, really, really bad postpartum depression that kind of turned into postpartum psychosis. It was hell. So that was easier to kind of deal with, I guess, at that moment. Bobby really took the reins on that, and I thank him for it every day, because him and Harlow have a bond now that me and her don't have. But I'm okay with that because he's her like cuddler. He's her safe place. So in the very beginning, she had the seizures, and when you first are getting accustomed to seizures, they're freaking terrifying. Not that they're not now, but you kind of get desensitized to them because they're all the time. Harlow has them every day, all day. So you just kind of learn that that's part of Harlow. And so in the very beginning, it's terrifying because it's terrifying. So we tried everything we could to try and like get those under control. We tried like the homeopathic ways. We tried actual like medicine. We tried CBD. At the time, it was like illegal. So it was like a big thing that you had to like be quiet about. So then as she, progressed, so they have an early intervention program that they're automatically put in, and you have a therapist that comes to the house 2 to 3 times a week and then just goes through everything with her, stretches her out, bends her, does all that stuff, works on head control, tries to get her to be the best she can for her body. So we had that going on, and then we had another therapy, outside therapy called Jump and Shout. And they're amazing. And she actually still goes there today. She went today and for OT. So they like to say it's like a feeding therapy basically, but Harlow doesn't eat. So it's more of like oral therapy. Like they more or less work with like her mouth. They like not clean it out, but they try to work with like her jaw and like things like that, like smaller, more tedious things, whereas physical therapy is very like legs and arms and neck and stuff like that. So she has a good balance of those two. So through the years, that was what we had. We had 3 different therapists, and each one of every day of the week she had therapy. So it was either OT, PT, or the one that comes to our house. Every day there was someone. So that was what was going on with that. But the thing that really like screwed us up in the first 2 years was about every 3 months, Harlow would get really sick and end up in the hospital. And the problem is so she has a lower immune system than all we do. So a simple cold to us is, 2 days and annoying, but to her, it will land her in the hospital. And so we basically, had to put her in a bubble and just keep her away from everyone. That's why, everything with COVID right now, I didn't have to change anything. Everything that we do is already like top notch, clean. And like, if we bring anything home, we like quarantine ourselves. Like it's so bad when she goes to the hospital because she's there for at least a minimum of 2 weeks. And those cots are not fun to sleep on.
Right.
No, they are not. And I'm the hospital person because Bobby has to still work, and So it's me and then my mother and my mother-in-law. They both would come in and like relieve me so I could go home and take a shower and check on the shop and stuff like that. So I mean, it's still going on now, like her going to the hospital and her having these, things that happen. But we've just kind of, with her growth, we've been able to slowly like introduce her a little bit more to things that will strengthen her immunity, the vitamins and all that stuff. So we're trying to make it not so that like this year's the first year, like she had, or not this year, 2020. In the very beginning of the year, she was airlifted to LA. She was bad. We think that she actually had COVID because she was in the ICU for 2 months.
Wow.
Something around there. But then she had another like July. She had another like cold, which normally would put her in the hospital. But this time we were able to get it under control at home. Because when you have a G tube, you can do fluids that way, like continuous fluids instead of like an IV.
Oh, great.
And then in the hospital, they just alternate Tylenol and Motrin. So we did the same thing. And luckily we got her through it without having to go to the hospital. So like I said, the older she gets and the more we learn, the more we're able to kind of do things on our own, I guess. Where in the very beginning, I had no idea what I was doing. So anytime that she had a fever of like 103, I would take her in and then they would automatically admit her. So, which sucks.
Yeah. How old is Harlow now?
She's 4.
4. Oh, and her birthday's in October, right? Is it October 22nd? Did I see?
Yeah.
So that's my mom's birthday. So I got all excited. I was like, oh, good people have been born on October 22nd. So tell me about Harlow's little personality. Cause I love watching on Instagram and she has this like sassy little funny personality. And I love that you're like sharing with so many people about her. Talk to me about little Harlow now.
So since day one, she's been sassy as all hell, but it's so, okay. So now that she has a little brother.
Tell me about Brixton too.
So anytime he cries, she thinks it's the funniest thing ever. And so she'll just sit there and start laughing and he's over here crying. And I'm like, normally like I shouldn't be laughing at this, but this is so funny because Harlow's over here just dying laughing at like her brother crying. And so it kind of makes us laugh because, we were told that, Harlow was going to be nothing and Harlow was going to be a lump on a log and basically the worst of the worst. And that's if she even lived. So the fact that she's sitting here laughing at her little brother, I'll take that. Like that's awesome to me. And then, so I'm the only one that picks at her. And by picks, I mean, picks her nose, picks her eye boogers, picks her mouth boogers, picks her ear boogers, like any like part that needs to be picked, I do it because it's gross.
Yeah.
So she gets this, like, she knows that I'm coming. So she starts to like turn her head away. And mind you, she's blind, in parentheses, blind. So like I'll come up and she'll just start like turning her head and getting like all like sassy. And then so I'll like start to like clean her up and get her ears going. And the whole time she opens her mouth as if I'm like full blown torturing her, like as if I'm sticking bamboo underneath her fingernails. And I'm like, dude, I'm getting the plaque out of your ears, like, or whatever it's called, the earwax. And I was like, calm down. So then I have to get her like eye boogers or whatever. And she just loses her mind when I do this to her. And I'm not joking. She needs like a break from me for at least like 30 minutes after that happens. Cause she starts breathing all fast and getting all pissed off. And like, she'll like push her arms to try and get me out of there. And I'm like, I'm sorry, to make sure that you are as clean as you can be. Like, so that's just a little visual of how it is with me and Harlow sometimes, because she knows what's going on. She has way more knowledge in that little brain. And I wish I could know what was going on in there. Cause we always joke and say like, she's in there. She can't express that she's in there and things aren't working properly, but she's in there. Cause we'll be sitting there talking and we'll make a joke and she'll start laughing. And there's no way that she could know what that is, you know, what we're talking about, but she'll start laughing like on cue. And then she'll start smiling when something happens that is meant for a smile. So like those particular situations, it's weird because they said that, you know, that would never happen. And then here it is happening. So I will like just take it and run with it. I'm fine.
So I don't know if you can see, I'm wearing my Hope for Harlow shirt. I'm wearing my Rad Babe.
I love it.
I have like a bunch of, yes. Babes Against Bullshit for people that are listening that can't. You have the coolest stuff. And every time, I know that you just released some new stuff. And so every time you release new stuff, I'm always like, oh my gosh, I have to buy it. How did the shop start? So Hope for Harlow, how did the shop start? And then talk to me about the store.
Okay, so the shop started while Harlow was still in the NICU. So like I said, I had really postpartum really bad, and I couldn't go into the NICU for half the time because every time I would go see her, I would throw up. And it was like, that's devastating. You know, you've already been through hell, and then now you can't even look at your kid. Like, this is ridiculous. So I started it because I would sit outside the NICU. And so I just kind of was trying to figure out ways that I could help the family out because I couldn't work anymore and it was all on Bobby, you know? So fast forward, I started making, I look back and I'm like, gosh, you guys really loved me. I started making, because I know how to sew. So I started making the car seat covers and bibs and burp cloths and all that stuff. And that was pretty good. A lot of people wanted it. It was on Etsy, and you know, it kind of just started growing from there. And then that's when shirts came into the picture. And I didn't know the first thing about how to make a shirt. I thought that was paint and stencils. Like, I did not know what I was doing. So over time, I slowly was able to figure out sort of what I was doing, and kind of just kept learning. Lots of YouTube. And it got to the point where I was making enough that I could go open my own website. And at first it totally was just strictly like to help pay for medical bills, because this was before she was on any sort of state help. So it was all on us. And every time we went to the emergency room and she was admitted, it was $500. And within the first year, she had gone to the emergency room 11 times.
Wow.
So it got pretty pricey. And Bobby couldn't, you know, Bobby was taking on the cars and the rent and everything. So I was like, I got to do something. So I figured out how to do the vinyl, the heat press vinyl. And so I started doing that. And at first I was doing like the mama bear, baby bear, all that stuff. And I realized how many people were doing that. And I just kind of was like, I'm going to move on to something else. Well, then my sister-in-law for Christmas, she got us all these shirts made that say Hope for Harlow. So I owe her the name. Like, that is my sister-in-law. Yeah. So we took the picture with those, and a couple people saw it like on my Instagram, and they're like, oh my God, are you selling those? And I was like, yes, I am. And it just went from there. It started very small, and then it kept growing. And then the more like followers that I got, the more, you know, like product I was making and sending out, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And then it got to the point where there was hundreds of orders, and it's always just been me. Like, every once in a while I'll have help here, I'll have help there, but it's always been me doing the plucking and the heat press and all of it. And it was getting to the point where I didn't have enough time to spend with Harlow and Bobby and do all these orders. So I was kind of at a turning point, like, okay, what do I do? And so I always wanted to have screen printed tees. that they're like they're like what you have on, like the best way to do a t-shirt. And I didn't have the money to do like certain minimal orders. Like I didn't have that. I didn't have, because it was all for Harlow. So in order to grow the company, I had to put a little bit of money in it, but I had to make sure Harlow was covered first. So it was a long process. So fast forward then, I met my printers, and like, I cannot toot their horns enough. They are amazing, and they are the reason that Hope for Harlow is still open. Because of them, I was able to keep going. They were understanding of our story, obviously, and I wasn't just a company, you know, out for the big bucks. Like I genuinely was just trying to make a difference, because all the while this was going on, in the very beginning, someone did a GoFundMe for us, and that paid for Harlow's first 3 stays at the hospital, so $1,500. And that like made me so like humbled that I wanted to give back. So my goal was every month to give back. So if it was 1 month, it would be a date night for special needs parents, and I would pay for the whole thing. And then another month, it would be, I would take like regular t-shirts, like kids t-shirts, and I would cut them on the top of the sleeves, and then I'd put buttons on them, and then we delivered them to the cancer center, oncology at the hospital. And so that way, when they're changing their ports and they're changing all their stuff that they have going on, instead of having to take off the shirt altogether, you can just, you know, unbutton it where that port is and then close it up, just because it's hard to get that stuff, you know, over, and then all the wires and everything. So it was just stuff like that in the very beginning I wanted to give back. And so because of that, people were also like making donations, like, hey, whenever you do your next pay it forward, like here, I want to help. So it was kind of cool. So where people were helping in that sense, I was able to kind of make the next business move, which was screen printing. And so that's when Love to Live Printing kind of took over. I didn't have to do the heat press anymore or anything like that. And from that point forward, it has just boomed like crazy amount. Because Jen, I just tell her everything I want. I just tell her, like, this is the style I want. This is the designs I want. This is how I want it to kind of look. And I just give her all of this information. And then she comes up with these beautiful designs.
So that's amazing. So she's doing the designs. I was going to ask you who, like, I figured you were coming up with like what the shirt said and like kind of the theme behind different things, but that's amazing that she's coming up with these designs. They're so cool.
Yeah. She's 50-50 with me. Like she's more, because I will tell, like in the very, very beginning, I was coming up with the designs and everything like that, but she is like an actual designer. So she knows how to work the programs and stuff like that. Like I tried it and I was like, I can't do this. So she started doing it, and I'll tell her like the Babes Against Bullshit, and then I'll find something that like say I see a shirt on Pinterest. I like how the lettering is stacked, not that, just how the lettering is. And then that's how you got Babes Against Bullshit. So you just take inspiration from all over, from her, from me, and we just kind of pile it all together and, you know, run with it. And every time she blows me out of the water. Every time I see these designs, I'm like, holy crap. So that's how it goes. And like I said, I couldn't do it without her. And then her husband is the one who screen prints all of my stuff. And there's a lot of stuff. So it's just been an awesome relationship with them. They've actually become our close friends.
That's so awesome. And you guys have been able to do so much good. Like you shared at the beginning, how you were picking these different things, but I've even seen so many different, I know that you donated like a wheelchair, you raised money for a wheelchair. You've done so many big things. And I love it because I think more and more we're starting to hear about these like social enterprises where people start a business and they're finding some way to give back. And that's what's touched me so much about what you're doing with Hope for Harlow, obviously you have all these like empowering messages, hopeful messages of hope that people are wearing around. You never know who's going to see these shirts and it's going to empower them or give them hope. But simultaneously, you're also doing these acts of good, which is amazing.
Yeah. And I love it. That's the whole, like, I started this company to pay for Harlow's medical stuff. So as long as I can cover that stuff, and as long as I can cover the actual business, then I don't need the extra money. Like, we're taken care of. I want to give it back. I want to give it to somebody who's having that day where they're just like, God, I hate my life because I can't pay this bill. You know, whatever the case may be, I want to help someone. Because in the very beginning with Harlow, I was that person that needed the help. So, and it's hard. It's hard to ask for help. You know, our pride gets in the way. And as much as we all want to help, you don't want their help because you don't want to admit you need the help. And so it turns into this like vicious circle. So usually the stuff that I'm able to help with, it's not like I'm like, here's $20, like go do whatever you want. It's like, here, I know I heard you needed this, like, let's, you know, here you go. And so that way they're kind of like, okay, I can't say no, you know? So the deal with the wheelchairs is, this girl, Taylor, that I've known for a long time. She's such a sweet girl. Her and her best friend, Diana, started a workout line, like company, called Salty Honey. And so we started the same year. Hope for Harlow and Salty Honey started the same year. So it's been awesome because we bounced off each other, like just encouragement back and forth because we're both growing at the same time. Well, we decided to do a collab where they do a workout outfit and I do a shirt and a hoodie or sweatshirt or whatever. And we sell them. And then we were going to buy someone a wheelchair. Who, the guy that made Harlow's wheelchair, he got on board and he was like, hell yeah, I'd love to do that, you know, whatever. So we were like, okay, cool. Like, problem solved. Like, he'll make it, we'll pay for it, we're good. Well, then within the first, I think it was like 2 minutes, we were all messaging each other and we're like, let's do 2. Because it was just like, we had gotten so many orders so quickly. My page froze because so many people were trying to get on and get theirs. And I did it pre-sale style so that everybody had a chance to get it. Because if I did it the other way, then it's a limited amount, you know, and I don't like doing pre-sale because it takes longer and I get anxiety if I have anyone's order for more than like 2 weeks. So it kind of drives me nuts. But in this situation, everyone was very understanding. So that was cool. So then we were like, okay, we're going to do 2. And then, so everyone was nominating everyone into the wheelchair, Tyler, everyone was nominating into his website. And he was, because he and his wife offered to read them and kind of break them down to see like what he's capable of doing. Because if, you know, someone sends one in and he can't do it, then there's no point in I picking it. And he's like, oh, I can't do it, you know? So he narrowed it down to 5 different ones. And, you know, me and the girls, we read them and kind of chose 2 as well. Well, this one that stuck out to all of us was this guy in Indonesia. He sent in a nomination. Why can't I talk? Nomination. And it was for him. And, you know, he basically said that, you know, I'm paralyzed from the waist down. This would help me and my family out a lot. Da, 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 da. And so Tyler wrote back and was like asking some more questions, like, you know, about it. And he sends him a picture. And the second I saw this picture, like, I just started bawling, crying. And I'm not a crier. So this obviously has to be something so crazy that it, you know, triggered me. And it's a picture of this guy, and you can tell he's definitely in a third world country. And he's sitting on a chair of some sort, and his legs are obviously paralyzed. And he tells his story a little bit deeper in while he's talking to him, and come to find out, there's something in his family's farm that can cause paralysis, some like something doing something, either a bug or I'm not exactly sure. I didn't look too much into that. Either way, he became paralyzed while working.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. So I told Tyler, I said, I don't care if nobody else pays, I will pay for the third one. And so I told the girls, I said, you can totally not do this. You don't have to. I know this is going on for each of us, like a couple grand. So I was like, don't worry about it if you don't want to. And they're like, hell no, we're doing it. We're doing it too. So then that was the 3. So we ended up doing 3 wheelchairs, and it was just such an amazing thing to give back. And because I know, like that guy in Indonesia, his family had to carry him everywhere because they don't have any option. They don't make wheelchairs there, it's a little bit different in that type of world. So to change someone's lives like that, that's what it's worth. That's what Hope for Harlow is. Like, it's never about anything more than trying to give back.
That's you're amazing, and what you're doing is just so incredible. And I know that it's an army that has risen up around you and Harlow. And I know that any person that's ever bought a shirt, anybody that's ever donated to what you're doing, anybody who's ever shared, like I always talk about on this podcast, that we oftentimes think about like, oh, you have to have money to make a difference. But with social media, you can just even share something or be following or, listen to a story or share it with other people. And it just continues to grow and grow and grow. So I can't wait to see what the future holds for you and for your family. Can you give me a little like teaser of what's to come for Hope for Harlow, or things that you and your family, hopefully things open back up with COVID? And I know that it's been a really crazy 2020, and already 2021 seems to be really crazy, but what's to come for you and your family and Hope for Harlow?
So Hope for Harlow, I'm changing some things around because normally I would do launches. So spring launch, summer launch, winter launch. But Hope for Harlow has gotten so big that even if I were to hire somebody, I literally don't have the room, which is an amazing issue. But I don't want to go get a warehouse or anything like that because I don't want to be away from the kids. So I work from home. So anytime I get a break, I go in and see the kids and then come back out. And so I decided, instead of being all about the money, because I'm not, I decided, okay, we're going to put more into the company in a different way. So this was supposed to be a surprise, but at least anybody who watches it'll be like, wait a second, I have to follow this girl. We're going to be doing a subscription box.
Cool.
So it's going to be every month. It's going to be a different topic, a different style, a different goodies inside, like keychains, tumblers, like a sweatshirt and a shirt. There's so many different things that we've been like kind of putting in the works. And so you'll be able to sign up to get a subscription box, and nobody else can like get that shirt. So if you have like a subscription with us, then you'll get that shirt, and it's going to be like a bomb shirt, like multiple colors, like all of the good stuff. And that way you guys can kind of feel special in that sense. And then each one also will be a letter from me and from Harlow and like what's going on, and just kind of a little bit more of what's that word?
Like a personal connection.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to be doing that. And then we're going to be doing, instead of big launches, I'll be doing like 3 shirts here, a sweatshirt there, a shirt here, and then just kind of let people shop at their leisure instead of everyone rushing because they're like, oh my gosh, it's going to sell out and she's not going to bring it back. So I rather everyone be able to get a chance to get it and just kind of slow things down. So it's definitely going to be an adjustment, but I think it's going to be a good adjustment. And I think it's going to be less stress on me, less stress on the printers, less stress on people, because they're like, well, how long is it going to take to get to me?
Right. That's so I can't wait to sign up for it. I'm 100% in. That's so cool. For people that are listening, Katie, what can they do to support you and support your work? Obviously, I talked about social media. People can follow your pages, share it, share the message of Hope for Harlow, share your story. You never know who might need to hear your story and Harlow's story. What can people do to support your work?
Definitely share it with anybody and everyone you can. It's so funny because I've been in this. I don't care about followers. Like I do because I want people to follow, Harlow's and ours journey. Of course I want that, but I don't like look at the number like, oh, like I've made it here. But I notice that it jumps from, so it'll be 20, whatever I'm at, and then period. And then it'll be 100. And I'm like, okay. And then it'll jump up to 200 and then it'll jump down to 100 and keeps going back and forth, back and forth. And I was like, what am I doing that people are interested in me and then they're leaving? Like I need to figure out what it is that I'm doing, because I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about religion. I barely cuss on there because a lot of kids follow us.
Right.
I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing to get these people to bounce back and forth. So yeah, if you guys can get me out of that little bouncing back and forth, that would be great. No, but honestly, just share the message. I just recently, well, not just recently, but over the last 2 years, I had like a severe mental breakdown, and I had really bad postpartum times a million, PTSD, all of it came out and really, really screwed me up. I had to do an outpatient program. But I started sharing that too. And come to find out, a lot of women are dealing with that too. And nobody wants to talk about it because it's got such a stigma on it, anxiety and depression. Like if you say those things, then you're a weak person, when in reality, it's the complete opposite. So I started sharing along with Harlow's journey, my journey. And I get a lot of feedback from women that are just like, thank God you posted that, because 1, I needed that, or 2, I had no idea that other people felt this way. Like, it's just such a thing that women can come together and talk about something that they're not supposed to talk about,
Yeah.
So between the two, it's just been such an amazing thing to have the platform to be able to help people. That's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And it gives other people courage. I think that you sharing your story, it gives sharing your story about you with Harlow, it gives other parents courage to stand up for their child. I think a lot of times life can be isolating, right? So being a parent, and just being an individual person, I think we saw so much happen in 2020. So many people were suffering in silence. They were, suicide rates have gone up. There are so many different things we could talk about with regards to mental health. But thankfully, I feel like people are more and more starting to talk about it and starting to share, and particularly women. Like you said, I think a lot of times women, there's this stigma, but I look at it and I see that women are stronger than they know. They're more resilient than they know. And all of us have our struggles. All of us have our things that we have to walk through. And sometimes I'm a firm believer that sometimes we have to walk through something so we can help someone else.
Oh, 110%. I agree with that. 100%. It's in the very beginning of my life with Harlow, I was terrified of special needs moms because I hadn't grieved. And no one told me this until I talked to this nurse that I had with Harlow. And she said, you have to grieve the loss of the child you thought you were going to have. And so I was in the middle of denial, and I didn't know that I was grieving in that sense because I didn't know that's what happened. So I was in denial. So I didn't want any special needs friends because I didn't want to acknowledge what was really going on. So once I was able to finally move on to the next steps, I was slowly able to talk to special needs moms. And then it kind of hit me holy crap, where have these girls been this entire time? I could have used them. And so it was on me, obviously, but I was terrified in the beginning. So if anybody else is going through that, it's completely understandable. You need a moment to get your bearings, and you need a moment to be like, okay, I'm not the person that I was before. I'm a completely different person now. So the friends that I have now are not going to understand a single thing that I am talking about. But these girls that I just met, they are. So it's awesome to be able to lean on them as much as they lean on me.
Mm. So I have two other questions. I'm so grateful for your time. I love your story so much. I wish we lived closer. I mean, I know it's COVID time, so we couldn't necessarily hang out, but I just love your story so much. I just love you as a person. You're such a light. But before I let you go, I have two questions. One is, you have this shop, Hope for Harlow, and what's giving you hope? I know that people have gone through so many difficult things in 2020. Life can be so difficult, but what gives you hope?
Oh, it's a tough one.
A deep question.
Yeah. So when COVID happened, I was like in the middle of like all things anxiety and all things like panic attacks and all of it. It was the worst. And so this happened and I was like, are you kidding me? Like this, how do we add to this? Like it's already as bad as it could get for me, but now let's make it worse. So when all this all happened, I was just terrified that I wasn't going to be able to get a grip on my anxiety and get a grip on the whole situation. They said it was 2 months and then it's 4 months and now we're going on a year anniversary, So I had to really like bring myself back and find something that I was going to be able to take the time and really be able to help me get a grip on reality. And so I told myself at the end of 2020, if I'm not where I need to be with my medications or with Hope for Harlow or with my kids and my family, then I've failed. And I know that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody, but it's not a hard job to do. Like as long as you fight and get it done. So by the end of 2020, my goal was to have my medications under control, my shop under control, and my family. And all three of them were. So to me, that was my hope that I had to get through the year is like, as long as we end the year like this dumpster fire of a year, like as long as I can be humbly happy with the tiny little family and stuff that I have, that's all I need.
And I think that's such a good point for anybody who's listening to think about is sometimes you just need a marker or a couple of markers like, okay, these are like, not that you have to have a bunch of goals, but these are a couple of things, and then just fight through it, just keep fighting and grinding and pushing through. And I know that's Harlow's story. I know that's your story. I know that's the shop story. I know you've just been through so many different things. And I think it's everybody's story.
Yeah.
But sometimes all you can do is what's right in front of you. And you just have to identify a couple of things like that will just, keep your life on track is all you can do.
My therapist told me, like, since you have chaos, right? Everything is everywhere. Take 3 things that you can change, that you can muster up and focus on those things. And once you're done with those things, then move on to the next, but focus on just those 3 things, because otherwise you're going to try and do everything all at once. And it's just chaos. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to do any good.
Yeah. Katie, I always end this podcast on one question. So I want to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
Gosh, you did not prepare me for that one. Say it again. I want to make sure I really get it right.
If you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
I mean, the cliche answer would be never give up hope, because, hope for Harlow. But honestly, I think the best message that I can give, that I feel like I've lived on for the last 4 years, is you can fall apart. You don't have to always be strong. Like, you're not a robot. You have emotions. You need to go through these emotions. So fall apart, do what you need to do, but don't build a house and live there. Just pick yourself up and keep going. So that's, I think, my message that I want everyone to know is that if you're going through a hard time and you feel like you're failing and you feel like you're just doing all these things wrong, you're never going to do anything with life, let it consume you. Let it take you down. But then once you're okay, come back up and keep on going. I think that's the best advice I could possibly give someone.
It's great advice. It's great advice, Katie. And I am just so grateful for you, for all the great work that you do with Hope for Harlow, for you being such an authentic voice on social media. I love following you. I'll make sure that all of your social media links, the website, everything is in our show notes for this episode. But thank you so much for all you do. And thanks for joining the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com.